from your side.
Sorry.
So, yeah, okay, that's better.
Oh, that's better. Yeah, now it's better.
Ah, yeah.
Thank you.
So, Christian, you have a little bit extra in your luggage. So maybe I would like to get a T-shirt, I think.
Yeah, you want the T-shirt back, you mean? So
Yeah.
bring it back to Germany. Yep. Ping me again during the conference.
Cool.
But could be possible because I have a little bit package room, but let's pray that the luggage doesn't get lost like on the way to Mexico. I had kind of 2 days wait for my luggage, and it seems they really opened it because they had a rescue blitz in there. And I think I really saw they opened the luggage and they really looked at the rescue blitz. So yeah,
they tried to log in or what?
I don't know. No, I think it looks a little bit strange if you scan the luggage.
Yes.
So I think it looks a little bit like something they want to take a look at.
So people,
yeah, it would be very useful to do some time bombs or anything like that. That could be the electronics to operate it. They're quite scared about such things.
That is practically a financial weapon.
Yeah.
Nah, come on.
Weapon of financial mass destruction. Yeah.
Don't put me on any list.
Here.
There's something
so
happening.
people, it's about
Might be
time.
some
Let's start. Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
You hear me, right?
Yep.
Okay, so
But you're not very loud though.
Yeah.
Yes.
welcome to our meetup today. The topic is Bitcoin boiling the ocean.
Can you move closer to the microphone? You're quite quiet.
Yeah, I think you have to come closer. I think there's some kind of technical issue with the microphone, but it's the virtual microphone. You just have to move a bit closer, I think. So welcome to our meetup today. Yeah, the topic is if Bitcoin is boiling the oceans, and if so, what can we do about it? And often you see people outside the tech, in the general tech space, that there are a lot of misconceptions around floating around why Bitcoin is actually using energy and what it's for, and then they also believe that maybe Bitcoiners don't take enough responsibility about this topic, but that's not really true because there's been an initiative for a few months already, and Stefan is introducing this today, or giving an update for those who know this initiative already. So Stefan, come on stage and introduce yourself and say hello.
Hey, thank you. So, okay, let me see. You guys hear me all right?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, nice. Yeah, so thank you for the introduction, and thank you all for coming. It's I see a lot of known non-faces, but names, so I guess a lot of you are probably already familiar with what I'm going to say, or a lot of it. Do we have the slides up already?
Yeah, I'm putting them up. Yeah.
All right, great. That's amazing. So I only have one screen here, so I cannot see the slides and you guys at the same time. So, but if you have questions or comments or something, I'm not sure how we're going to handle this. I hope Michael will just help us, or you can just talk. I think you can just talk across, and we'll see. Otherwise, yeah, just try and jump in when you have questions, when you want to discuss something. I think we have enough time to talk about all these things, and yeah, it might be that a lot of you know a lot what I'm going to say already, but let's see. Okay, so my name's Stefan. I'm probably one of the people who founded netpositive.money. It's an initiative by Bitcoiners who care about the climate and are not just content with saying it'll be all right. It's all fine. Not all the Bitcoiners are like this. And yeah, so I wanted to talk about Bitcoin and climate change. And you might have heard a little bit of this topic lately. There was, I think, a little bit of discussion. Actually, I've never heard so much about this. And I've been in Bitcoin for quite a while, but it's going really, really crazy. You know, there's, as they say, then they fight you and then you win. But this might be the fight. I don't know. But I think people are actually right about this. They're right that this is something we need to discuss. We should talk about, I guess. Here's some stats. So it seems that Bitcoin is ranked between Pakistan and Norway at the moment. If you count Bitcoin as an electricity consuming country, that's one comparison. But the other comparison is you could power the Bitcoin network for 1.8 years with the always on but inactive home devices in the US alone. The energy that these use. So is it a lot or is it not a lot? Who knows? Comparisons are always rhetorical devices, and just like statistics, right? It's a way of lying, or it's a way of saying something, and depending on how you select your statistics, you might get a different impression, right? But yeah, so people have been discussing this a lot, and I think this all came to head with this tweet that I have here by the one who shall not be named, I guess. I'm going to read through it a bit, and then I hope we can talk about what we like about it and what we don't, because I think the community reacted really pissed about this tweet, and I can really relate. So it says Tesla has suspended vehicle purchases using Bitcoin. Interesting, right? We are concerned about rapidly increasing use of fossil fuels for Bitcoin mining and transactions, especially coal, which has the worst emissions of any fuel. That's a sentence, right? It's interesting. So how did they learn that? I asked myself. Why? Then cryptocurrency is a good idea on many levels and believe it has a promising future, but this cannot come at great cost to the environment. I think most of us would agree with that. And then Tesla will not be selling any Bitcoin, and we intend to use it for transactions as soon as mining transitions to more sustainable energy. That's interesting. We're also less than Bitcoin's energy per transaction. So does that make sense to you? Yeah, everybody's fine with that. Oh yeah, there's somebody says we need energy consumption for the first civilization level. Yeah, I think that's an interesting thing that we might talk about because so far we have only talked or mainly talked about energy use, and I think a good distinction that we might introduce here is that energy use in itself isn't really a bad thing, right? But the externalities of it could be really bad.
Well, if you really strictly follow that logic, you would also have to question any gaming computers or other things, which are basically heaters which compute simultaneously as a side product, more or less.
Right.
You could also argue, like, who needs like rendering in real time just to have some entertainment? That's also wasteful. I mean, what is wasteful, right? So I think the purpose at the end justifies it because, otherwise you can kill yourself and not use any energy at all anymore. I mean, that's a ridiculous argument. Or public transport or cars. I mean, so many things you could question every single day. Is that really necessary? And imagine how huge energy amounts are used for that stuff. So
true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I have to say, like, and this is what Stefan, I think, wanted to say, is like the energy is one thing, the other side is the CO2 footprint. So if I am with my gaming machine, I'm a privacy user. I can choose my contract, and I can choose a renewable source for my gaming stuff, and that's right. That's okay. But with Bitcoin, I cannot choose my mining provider. That's okay. I'm fine with that. But I just want to make the difference clear. So I have no choice than to accept at the moment what the Bitcoin miners are delivering. And Bitcoin could work completely fine without fossil energies. It doesn't change the network. It doesn't make the network better with fossil energies. So there is something to discuss here, I think.
Yep. Good points. Interesting points for sure. Yeah, I think we'll get to that. Yeah, just I think it's interesting in this tweet here that there's some interesting things here. One is that Tesla has suspended purchases, right? So they don't like transactions, but they will not be selling any Bitcoin. And I'll argue that this might be alarmist and maybe wrong, because we've seen all these headlines, right? You guys might know this one. Bitcoin emissions alone could push global warming above 2 degrees by Mora et al. It's famous in the community by now. This is a paper from 2018 in Nature Climate Change, and it's the worst paper I've ever seen in any journal about anything really. It's terrible. It's just these people did not understand how Bitcoin works at all, and it seems that a lot of first. This was 2018, right? And again, these days you can read lots of mainstream media publications that cite this study. And what they don't tell you, interestingly, is that in 2019 there was in the same journal a paper called "Implausible Projections Overestimate Near-Term Bitcoin CO2 Emissions" that debunked the whole paper. It just said, okay, this is all nonsense. That's what's in there. But you never read about this paper. That's I find pretty disturbing, and also I think a lot of this the arguments in this paper, in this wrong paper, stem from this meme that Alex de Vries has, in my opinion, probably invented, which is here from his webpage. It says single Bitcoin transaction footprint. So what's the footprint of a single Bitcoin transaction? And then he says, okay, that's half a ton of CO2 that's emitted for a single transaction. And a lot of energy, and there's electronic waste, all these things. And I think you can see the repercussions of this in this 2018 paper, and then you can also see them here in what Elon is saying, right? Because he's very concerned about transactions, and he's not very much concerned about holding Bitcoin. And I think that's wrong. Why? What's wrong with these claims? Well, Bitcoin's energy use is almost exclusively due to mining, right? So, of course, there are nodes and stuff, and there's exchanges, but it's not a lot in the global scale, right? More than 99% of the energy use is mining. And the amount of mining, but depends only very slightly on the transaction demand. It doesn't really change much when you have less or more transactions. Actually, the supply of transactions, like the number of transactions you can do on the network, is fixed in Bitcoin, right? Pretty much. It varies a bit, but it's for independent reasons, because we want to keep it decentralized. We don't want to have big blocks. Actually, this is cropping up again. This is also something you can see in Elon's tweet a bit. And I found that very disturbing that it comes back here. We are also looking at other cryptocurrencies that use less than 1% of Bitcoin's energy per transaction. But if you think about this, what does this mean? If say he would be using, I don't know, Dogecoin or Bitcoin SV or something, and it would have just the same mining power that Bitcoin does, because the price would be the same. But somehow they would make it possible that the blocks are 10 times larger. So there are 10 times as many transactions, which means that the energy per transaction would be just a tenth of Bitcoin's energy per transaction. But would this make Bitcoin, this other clone any greener? Would it use any less energy or better energy? Or I really don't get it. I don't think there's anything to be gained here. If you look at energy per transaction, like if you increase the number of transactions, it might be better in some other dimensions. I don't care, yeah, but it certainly doesn't make it greener.
Can I just quickly, because of Dogecoin, it was funny because one of the Dogecoin devs, there is really one Dogecoin dev, said, oh yeah, but Dogecoin is just 7% of Bitcoin's energy use, so it's a lot of greener. And the funny thing is, if you look at the market cap compared between Dogecoin and Bitcoin, it's about 7%. The funny, well, I don't know why this just coincidence, but just to give you a little bit the idea how somebody thinks about stuff in a kind of wrong way.
So that's the Dogecoin devs, yeah. Oh yeah, there's a comment here. Even going cost inefficient high. Reduced costs. A ton of to reduce. Yeah, we'll get to offsetting. Well, this is about offsetting the question. That's what we actually want to do. That's what net positive is all about, really. And it's not right, as here it says not every BTC transaction is on the blockchain. A lot of transactions are at exchanges and others at second level. Absolutely, yes. Please mute yourself, KH. Says Otto. Yeah, that's true. That's another very important thing, that the on-chain transactions aren't the full picture. Not at all. If you really want to look at transactions as a utility, as a sign of utility, you'd have to include all the other transactions. Say Lightning, right? Lightning is something that isn't possible in other systems like gold, or it's still cryptographically secure, even if there are other trade-offs, security trade-offs than in Bitcoin. But you can. There's practically no limit to how many Lightning transactions you can do with just based on the blockchain as it is, right? So that's another argument why this is really misleading, I think. Yeah, but I wanted to finish this here. So yeah, but yeah, because the transactions are fixed, right? And it isn't quite true. If you do a lot of transactions, you will increase the price for the transactions. So you will increase the fees, and then in the long run you will increase mining. But it's really slight. It does definitely not cause 0.5 extra tons of CO2 if you do one extra transaction. That's just not right. That's just not right. And why is this a problem? Because as we have seen with Elon, flawed models lead to flawed ideas, lead to flawed actions, right? People think, oh yeah, we could just use Bitcoin SV, which has less energy per transaction, so it must be greener. But it's not. If it had the same market cap, it would have exactly the same amount of energy use, and would have exactly the same CO2 output. Right? That's not a solution, but which is why I think it's important to call out these really bad takes. All right. Oh yes, there's a long text here. I cannot read that. Saifeddin, I think. I don't know. It's why Bitcoin is worth it. Yeah, yeah. That's something I wanted to address in the beginning. We talked about this a little bit. I think a lot of the critiques of Bitcoin, of the energy or CO2 emissions of Bitcoin, start with the assumption that Bitcoin is useless. And of course, if you start with the assumption that it's useless, or worse, it's immoral because I don't know, it's bad for equality, or for I don't know, it's good for crime or something. If you assume that Bitcoin is a bad thing and it's immoral, then of course every gram of CO2 that it emits is bad. That's clear. But if you start with this assumption, well, yeah, we cannot win with these people, and we probably shouldn't try, because it's yeah, I can kind of feel for them, because I don't like SUVs, and I catch myself saying, oh yeah, it's really a shame that all these people have to drive SUVs, right? But, people like to do that. Who am I to tell them what to drive? I think the same thing is happening here. Bitcoin is just a way that people choose to spend their money, and I think it's a mark of our freedom that we should leave, that we should let them decide how they do that. So I guess, yeah, probably it's also a good idea to talk about why we find Bitcoin worth it, but that's probably not what I'm going to talk about today, really much, very much. I think you all have good reasons for doing that. Yeah, but as we've seen, the mainstream media treatment of this and the very powerful memes by people like Alex de Vries lack nuance, and I want to try to get into a little bit more nuanced discussion of this. Any questions or comments?
May I add something?
Sure.
Just a thought. I mean, if you think about the public perception, I think it's just also the easier way to find it obscure and yeah, it's dodgy, because really understanding it, and I myself am far away from that, but I think it's way more challenging than just saying, yeah, I might have halfway understood it, something about blockchain, a little bit of hash, SHA, what was that again? Not really, no real idea. I mean, you have to be a real mathematician to really follow that elliptic curve stuff and whatnot, so it's really fucking complicated. So I would just claim that a very little amount of people on this planet fully understands that stuff, how it works. So it's just also part of the convenience to say, yeah, it's not that great, so I don't have to take the effort even trying to halfway understand it. And maybe I will throw some money on some exchange and gamble a bit. So for most people, it's just gambling. And I personally find it more frightening that one entity who farts something out has more power to shake the stock market than individual thinking. I mean, even if Bitcoin is total shit, then it was shit 1 week ago as well, and not just today. So nothing they claim is anything real new. It's just hyped, and for me, it's the same stupidity like the gender shit nowadays. So everything is a scandal, and yeah, you collect the votes by that.
All right. Yeah.
Just some quick thing to change perception here of Bitcoin being useless or just for speculation and stuff. It's always a great reply to say that's a privileged Western view, because those people understand the concept of privilege, and then they say, wait, no, I'm the privileged one. Well, wait. This is not the position they want to be in, but they are in. They are in a financial system that works for them, and maybe for them, Bitcoin is just a speculation tool. But around the world, we're seeing use cases where it helps people that are not that privileged like we are. And this is something very, very quickly, at least get the people a little bit quieter and maybe a little bit more.
Good argument. It's really good as a community that we take this moral stance, right? Because I think some people have tried this, but I've never seen it successful with Michael Saylor, where he just he did this repudiation of Bill Maher, where he said like, I find it cruel and tasteless that a rich entitled guy wants to deprive billions of poor women and children of their chance to economic survival. just for laughs, or just because he finds something objectionable or something. Yeah, I mean that's nice. That turns the whole moral outrage on its head. So that's I think that's a good argument. Yeah, but I don't agree that it's all the whole ecology argument, the whole climate argument is all bullshit. I think there is a valid concern there, and that doesn't mean that the FAT is right, but it means that I think we should we should know what Bitcoin does to the climate and what we can do to make it better. That's what.
Yeah, I didn't want to question that, but I'm just saying that is no real new insight within 1 week looking at the stock market, the energy consumption topic. That's all I wanted to say. I mean, it's now sold as it would be a totally new insight, and that totally feels stupid to me. That is all I'm saying. Maybe it's horrible, maybe it's a waste of energy, all granted. I don't know.
Yeah, just in. We just learned that Bitcoin uses energy. It's interesting.
It's like, oh, people die on the street every day in car accidents. Who would thought about that? I mean, that's just retarded. Sorry.
Right. For sure. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Yeah, so let's agree with the people. Yes, Bitcoin mining does cause CO2 emissions and even other externalities. Yeah, there is toxic electronic waste and other stuff. Yeah, there are landfills filled with miners, I guess, somewhere. I haven't seen them, but they're probably there. And yes, it does cause CO2 emissions. And the CO2 emissions are my personal take is we should try and curb these, because I do believe that climate change is a problem. If you don't, it's your prerogative. You can tasteful, right? Any activity that people do, or many people do at least, has externalities, and most of them also have a lot of CO2 emissions, right? And Bitcoin is a really popular thing, right? You got to notice that there's more than 1%, maybe 3% or so of the world population on Bitcoin. Oh, there's echo again. Somebody has an echo on, I think.
It's the hard fork.
The hard fork. Could you please mute yourself? Yep. No. Still on.
And if you can mute the birds, that would also be nice.
The birds. Oh,
you can do that
like
in
the
the.
birds.
You can do that in the settings, in the preferences. Then then reduce the media volume.
Thank you.
And yeah, Karl-Heinz says here there are very few things that grow as fast as BTC, but no surprise. But still, yeah, I mean but that's just because it's successful. It's a successful thing, right? People like it.
So what I'm trying to say is that what's worrying about the CO2 footprint of Bitcoin is not necessarily its current value, but its growth rate.
Yeah,
and the question if Bitcoin, if it takes the trajectory that we would like to see, and is worth $100,000, $1 million, $10 million in the near future, is the CO2 footprint also growing by a factor of 1,000 or not? So we have the halvings, but they come a bit slow, and so it's a bit worrying.
We'll get to that. Yeah, that we'll talk about that. But yeah, I think so too. That's it's worrying for sure. Yeah, so we agreed that mining causes CO2 emissions. So what is causing mining is maybe a stupid question, but let's be clear about this. Mining, the miners mine because they get a reward for it, right? And so you would expect that the total mining cost, the sum of all of the cost that all miners invest in mining, goes toward the block reward, right? The sum of the block rewards. It's a little noisier than that, because it's never static, the block rewards, right? It decreases every 4 years, and then there's fees and stuff. So, and there's bull markets and bear markets, and the price changes a lot. So it's actually hard to say how close the mining cost tracks the block rewards. So there's always some lag in there, because miners have to then if the price rises, the mining cost doesn't rise as fast, because you simply can't build as many miners that quickly. But it goes there. So in the limit, the mining cost goes toward the block reward, and the block reward is composed of the block subsidy and fees. And right now that's 6.25. That's what was 50 BTC in the beginning. Now it's after 3 halvings, 6.25, and about 1 BTC. It's there's quite some variance there, but the fees is about 1 BTC. So we have to I want to make it clear that the block reward by now is dominated by the subsidy. It's about 85% of the block reward is the subsidy, and just 15% is the fees. And this is high fees now because we're in a bull market, and we cannot change the subsidy. But it's falling exponentially by itself. That's what you just said. Every 4 years it just halves, right? It's we celebrate that, we Bitcoiners. But what does change a lot is the change is the price of BTC, because the block reward is just fixed, pretty much fixed in BTC, but it's not fixed in dollars. It depends on the Bitcoin price mostly. And what causes the price rise? It's hodling. It's people wanting to own Bitcoin. And so I argue that hodling, like holding Bitcoin, is actually the main cause of CO2 emissions in Bitcoin today. Well, will change, but now it is. And it's also Bitcoin's main utility, which is a good fit, I think, because most people, I think, profit from the price rise in Bitcoin because they hodl. But it's also which causes the most emissions, because it causes the price rise. Does anybody disagree?
Yeah, I completely agree, because it's a security delivered to the network that what miners are doing, and you profit from the security if you're hodler, because this secures your holdings. Even offshore, if you're very deep down in the blocks depths, you maybe not reliant on all this new fresh energy that much anymore, but you're still profiting from it. So at least to change this perspective from transaction to holding, that's the main use for the security, makes absolutely sense to me.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, it might make sense for some other. If you're an exchange and you do a lot of transactions, then maybe your impact is larger on the transaction level. But I don't know. I've not looked into this very, very closely. But for the normal people, I mean, there are actually people who sell offsets who have calculators that ask you how many transactions you have done, and depending on that, it calculates how much you have contributed to the CO2 emissions of Bitcoin. And I think that's really problematic. They say the Winklevoss twins go to this calculator and they have never made a transaction in the last 10 years because they're just hodlers, right? We know their Bitcoins are in cold storage. So they go to this calculator, and you cannot even, by the way, you cannot select at this calculator, they cannot select 0 transactions, but okay, they say, well, I made 1. And it then tells them, okay, you probably should offset half a ton of CO2. But that's probably wrong, because the Winklevi own 1% of all Bitcoins, right? So I think they should account for they are responsible for 1% of the Bitcoin emissions. Yeah, that's what I want to say about that. But let's see. Okay, so that's how it works. But the good news is it doesn't boil the oceans just yet, and we have also good reason that it won't, right? So and there is research. You can find that on netpositive.money. There's a sources section there, and there are 2 main studies that have looked in a really robust scientific way at how much CO2 is produced by the network, by the miners, and they pretty much all agree about, like, in an order of magnitude at least, it's about 110 megatons CO2 in a lifetime so far. And I think this is actually probably a pretty large overestimation. It could be much less, but it's really hard to say. It's really very hard. Because what these researchers did is they first get an estimate of the energy use, which is relatively easy. Even there are lots of variances, but you can get a good estimation. Again, I think one digit of precision, that's as far as you can get there, but of course you can get there. But then if you have the energy use, how do you get to CO2? You would have to know how this energy is actually produced. And not only that, if you really want to look at at the additional effect of Bitcoin, you would have to know what would have happened if the mining didn't happen. If it had never happened, would there actually have been less energy produced? Does this lead to more energy production? These are really complicated questions. They're really hard to to understand, and people have not really tried. I haven't seen any studies who have addressed this. So what these studies do is they just look at, they try to get a grasp at regional concentration of miners, and then they say, okay, in this region we have pretty good a pretty good understanding of the average composition of the energy mix and the carbon footprint of the energy mix, and then they just assume, okay, if a miner is in that region, they will probably use that energy mix, which I think it's already a really bad assumption, because, well, miners tend to buy the cheapest energy that they can get, and it's probably cheap because it's surplus. It's just there anyway, right? And it's probably also renewable. In China, you see that a lot. So all these studies are overestimating pretty surely, I think. But okay, let's just take them at face value. Well, and then it's 110 megatons of CO2 in its lifetime so far, and it will be about like double digits. You can say double-digit megatons per year now at the moment, and that is about 0.1% of world energy-related CO2 emissions, not world CO2 emissions, but energy-related CO2 emissions. So there's no land use in there, no buildings, and of that, it's about 1,000. So it's not boiling the oceans, but it's also not nothing, right? It's something you can actually notice on a worldwide scale, but it's not something that will, certainly not something that will on its own do a 2% increase, 2 degrees increase. And the question, but that's how it is now, right? So the question is, will this just grow exponentially? Because it has grown exponentially. At least as we, if we look at this relatively crude estimation, then this looks like exponential growth, which makes sense because the price of Bitcoin has been growing exponentially, and it's actually really hard to say where this will go, because it depends on many factors. We said, okay, the energy use. Well, the energy use is. No, let's start with the mining cost, right? The mining cost, we said, is block reward times the price. So we really don't know where the price is going, but actually we know that the price will not go to infinity. Well, it cannot rise exponentially forever, and there are good signs that the price growth is slowing down. It's still growing really quickly, but it is slowing down. And then the block reward pretty much halves every 4 years. So the mining cost will peak at the moment where within 4 years the price doesn't at least double anymore, and nobody knows when that will be the case, but there will be a point where this will happen, right? Except then there's still the fees, right? And the fees become more and more important. So it might be that it won't actually peak because of the mining cost. So it might be that the mining cost never peaks, right? Because the price just keeps rising a little bit, which is natural in a appreciated asset and in a limited asset, and the block reward at some point doesn't fall anymore because the fees just stay the same or keep rising. So the mining cost might not peak. That's a problem here, but it will also not just rise exponentially forever. Then the power usage is the mining cost divided by the power cost, right? And that's already okay. So we get the mining cost, right? And then how do we get to power usage? We divide it by power cost, and that's also really problematic because the power cost might just fall all the time. I think arguably this has increased CO2 emissions and power usage of Bitcoin over the last years. Because I think the average power cost of miners will probably have fallen as mining has become more and more industrialized and professional, and people have deals with power stations, and now actually power stations become big miners. So the total power cost will probably fall. Like energy and the energy price, the price of generating energy worldwide is falling. And luckily it's falling even more, much quicker on renewable energy. So there might be an argument there that okay, so maybe the power usage will grow because the cost is falling, but the CO2 emissions won't grow because because the renewable energy saturation will rise and rise and rise because it's just cheaper. But there's also another interesting angle here, I think, because power usage is mining cost divided by power cost. So what if power cost would be, if power would be more expensive because of carbon taxation? But that's ideal. Bitcoin mining would react totally perfectly to this. I mean, it's not just that miners would avoid using carbon-intensive things because it's more expensive, but if this raises the total cost of energy, there would have to be less Bitcoin mining, because Bitcoin mining tends to go upwards until the block reward times BTC price is reached. And if the whole mining is more expensive because energy becomes more expensive because of carbon taxation, we will have less Bitcoin mining. We will have less need for Bitcoin mining. So carbon taxation would have a double positive effect on Bitcoin mining. We have once we get a majority solar grid, there should be a giant electricity surplus during sunny days. Yeah, the problem is between now and 2030, 2040. Yeah, that's actually, we'll get to that as well, I think. Yeah, any other questions or remarks on this here? So this is what we know about that. Not a lot. Yeah, we also, I think, no, not specifically, but maybe we touched this before. Proof of work, it's not a waste. Because often you hear, now in this discussion, you hear the argument, well, Bitcoin should just change to proof of stake, right? Or proof of anything else. But just do it, just change it. But there is not a cheaper alternative to what this provides, as far as we know. I mean, there's a reason, because the Bitcoin is 12 years old now, and there is no proof of stake coin that has any market share, really. The Ethereum people have claimed to change to proof of stake since their beginning, since 2013. They say, oh yeah, it will be very soon, we will change to proof of stake. But what this actually means is, well, we don't know if this really would work. There are good arguments that it cannot work, like things like the long-range attacks or nothing at stake problem. And I get the impression that especially in Ethereum, the Ethereum development here works like this. It's like they try something and somebody tells them, but it's easy to attack. Just do this, and they say, oh yeah, you're right, but that's actually not what we wanted to do. We just make it a little more complicated to rule this attack out. But this complication probably introduces another attack. So they never quite say what is their algorithm really. And that's just the security standpoint. Yeah? From a security standpoint, I think it's not clear at all that proof of stake might work. But even if it were, it's not clear that it has similar properties, economic properties as proof of work. It definitely doesn't do distribution, which maybe that's not a problem, because now 90% of Bitcoins are already distributed. But well, I don't know. But and the other thing is, we're not sure if this worked, and if we could get around the distribution problem and the problem of centralization that proof of stake probably entails, would it really be better? That's not clear at all, because there must be a cost to this whole this whole security. And if the cost is just paid in people staking money, this is money that could have been used for something more useful, like I don't know, planting trees or doing something for the climate, right? So why is this better than just mining? That's not clear. I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm not saying it's not. Maybe there's a great proof of stake future somewhere, but I haven't seen it, and it's definitely not easy to just switch to it, and nobody has succeeded in this. So it's a bit like saying, yeah, all this solar energy and stuff, that's really complicated, because you can just use fusion or just use perpetual motion. I've heard that it works. I don't know if does anyone have see this differently, or if have more remarks to this or questions.
Yeah, I'm with you with the proof of stake. It's not a real solution there. And even before, even now, we would now see how it works on Ethereum, and then we need to have it get some test time, and then maybe some people will think about changing it. And not that we have a fork situation in Bitcoin, though. So there will always be proof of work, like there's always Ethereum Classic and all this stuff. So it will not just go away by making a switch. So this is a kind of illusion that people have. Oh, we just need to switch Bitcoin and then it's fine. This would be even if people in the Bitcoin sphere, this would be a process over the next 10 years, and I don't see that it would solve the energy situation or the CO2 situation. It's not solving that. On the other side, I have to say, with the Ethereum people always delaying stuff like, oh yeah, this will be solved in the future and stuff. And it reminds me a little bit like Bitcoin people argue about that Bitcoin will be part of solar and wind infrastructure. Oh yeah, we will just see next year, or we'll just see next year, we will see all wind parks and solar be built, but just because of Bitcoin. We haven't heard this for years now also, and haven't seen it yet. So we have to be careful a little bit. Oh yeah, a lot of people that Bitcoin will fuel or will power the environmental revolution is long-term something that I hear a lot from a lot of Bitcoiners. What I even believe in long-term, but I think it's also some promise we always promise for the future. So we always have to be difficult just to hit on the Ethereum people there for just promising stuff for the future. The same notion is happening with Bitcoin too.
Yeah, good point. Good point. All right.
I think proof of stake is primarily the interest of some very rich people, because they currently are the ones who control the banking system. And if Bitcoin, the new money, changes to proof of stake, it's very simple for them. They just have to buy enough, and well, they probably can even print the money that they need to buy. And if they are, so to say, the richest ones, then they are the ones who set the rules. This is exactly what they want already.
I'm not so sure about that. I think that's a fallacy. I hear that often, that argument, but I'm not so sure, because what in Bitcoin, we're pretty proud of this. We discovered in 2017 that miners don't actually control the rules. They don't set the rules. They don't. And why would it be different with proof of stake? The stakers just validate. They just order the transaction. That's all they do, really. They don't set the rules. But I don't know. Maybe
they can ban things, that they can ban certain transactions. They can decide who can do transactions or who don't. They can block transactions then.
Yeah, well, but why couldn't they just buy mining hardware? I mean, yeah, there's probably something there, but it's I don't know.
I think with mining hardware, it's very limited, and there is quite a competition on the planet. However, with money, it's far easier. Our currently elite, so to say, dominating the banking system, will probably far easier be able to buy the majority of Bitcoins. But buying the majority of mining, it's more difficult.
Why that should be easier. I think buying the majority of Bitcoin is actually pretty hard. But I don't know. Yeah, but as you say, as we see here, proof of stake and the whole discussion, there are a lot of really subtle points there, even about the economic properties of this. So it's not just like a drop-in thing. We can't just say, okay, well, just change it, right?
Yeah.
Even if we wanted to, we can't. Yeah. We get to that, but we're absolutely not sure if we want that.
So maybe I can just add, because I just read a piece again about Vitalik talking about proof of stake, because I asked the Ethereum guys, okay, I want to have an update. What did I miss the last years? So what's the last status? And I read this Vitalik piece, and he even self-admits that rewriting history is easier with proof of stake, because if you have a majority of stakers, they can easily rewrite the history. And Bitcoin with proof of work, you have to invest the energy again. You have to build those blocks again. And so changing history is much more costly with a proof of work system than with a proof of stake system. Vitalik is just saying, yeah, trust some checkpoints we give you. So and
that's nonsense.
and this is like, okay, now I have to trust so I can, so this is like
why
I
do I
then
need
trust.
a blockchain? Right?
Yeah, why do I need a blockchain?
If you can do checkpoints, then why don't you just use the database, right?
Right.
It's really, there's subtle things here, and I just thought about. I just said maybe it's not the case that the stakers can actually control the rules, but actually I think they probably can, because in Bitcoin they can too. The rich people, the people who own all the Bitcoin, can change the rules in Bitcoin too. Well, they can change the rules basically easily, but say if you own pretty much all the Bitcoin, then I mean that's what the system says, right? Bitcoiners say like the users, so the hodlers, they control the rules, right? And then if you also control the selection of transactions, then maybe that's too much too much power. I don't know. Yeah, you see, there's lots of really subtle points as to, it's not just, you can't just change it. I don't know. Maybe this works, and I totally see. If Ethereum does this successfully for 10 years and we see, oh, that's all fine, it all works nicely, then I don't know. Yeah, maybe they have an argument that now we know that proof of work is waste, but so far I haven't seen any convincing arguments for that.
Yeah, especially if they need checkpoints. So they introduce some keepers of the Grail, who are the holy people whom we all believe in, that they do always the right thing. Yes, did I got that correct? Or
that's absolutely. I mean, if you can do that, then why do you need a blockchain? I mean, you can just run a server. That's if these people, if you have people who control the checkpoints, it's really nonsensical. It's really just
as a
decentralization.
It's getting boring because you're off topic. I mean, I think we all agree that proof of stake is not the way forward.
Okay, great.
So yeah,
let's go on.
It's just not related to climate change anymore.
Yeah, you're right. Probably not. Okay.
So yeah, but in the context of our media, it's often put into context.
It is.
They often claim that changing to proof of stake is an important topic for them. Lots of people bring it on.
Harder. This will get really. This will get more. I think if Ethereum really goes that way. I'm not convinced they will succeed at all. But well, let's see. Okay, but let's just note some more things where I think we all agree. Bitcoin won't just go away, right? You cannot just outlaw it. We cannot, if we approve or not. It's designed to be resilient. It will be there. It's just, that's the point of Bitcoin, right? That you cannot just outlaw it. And we also won't just change Bitcoin, even if we were sure that Bitcoin, the proof of stake is great, right? Or that we can't just change it. Everybody has to agree. That's the main value proposition, right? You can't. It's designed to be resilient against change and against going away. So these are things that are in the media all the time, but I think we all agree that's nonsense. It just won't happen that way. Let's just exclude that. Okay. And then now finally we get to the good slide, the one you've been waiting for, I'm sure. It's Bitcoin might be net positive for the climate anyway, long term at least, right? So why could that be? That I've got 5 points here. That you probably can think of more. The first one is making energy subsidies impractical. I got an extra thing for that here. The IMF said in 2015 there, if you count all the energy subsidies, but they're really, I mean, they say, okay, energy subsidies are even not pricing externalities correctly. And I kind of agree, but it's maybe it's a wordplay to call that subsidies, but I'm not sure. But Bitcoin miners might actually make these not feasible anymore, because they just go, if you have energy subsidies, they will just come to your country and just use up all the energy. And maybe that's not what you want. And then as a state, you have two choices. You can just prohibit Bitcoin mining, or you can do away with the subsidies. Both are fine for Bitcoin. So that's one thing that might work. Then it might make legacy systems less profitable, and by that I mean mainly gold, which is I think you can pretty clearly see it there. In my opinion, Bitcoin is now really competing with gold for a lot of applications, and gold mining turns out is a little more costly than Bitcoin mining now in CO2 alone. It's also really a dirty business and has lots of other externalities and human costs, and it's really terrible. And if you if Bitcoin takes away market share from gold, I think that would make gold cheaper, and this would make Bitcoin gold mining less profitable, because gold mining actually works pretty much the same as Bitcoin mining. I mean, Bitcoin was modeled after gold. It's like people just can mine gold permissionlessly whenever they feel it's profitable. So if gold gets cheaper, there will be less gold mining, and so this will, but there will be more Bitcoin mining then. But maybe, I don't know what's worse. We'll find out, I guess. But yeah, that might be a positive effect. It can help finance renewable energy solutions. Rutzol just talked about this. I think Square Crypto has just published a white paper about this, where they make the case that this is a good business case. Yeah, I think there's something there. I'm pretty sure there's something there, and people try this. But it's not easy. It's not as cut and dry, I think, as people are making it out. The idea is that if you have renewable energies like solar and wind and stuff, these don't work all the time, and you have to over provision them massively. So you have to, you can't just aim for the average usage, but you have to have much more capacity, and they're always, you need batteries and all that stuff, and all this costs money. And it's great if you have someone like Bitcoin miners who are always the buyers of last resort. They can always just consume your energy if you don't need them. So that makes it easier to finance these things. And we've seen some people trying this, but it's too early I think, to say that it has really been a success. I haven't seen a large scale deployment where I say, oh yeah, this is nice. You can actually measure that this saves CO2. We've seen negative price in electricity. Yeah, that happens. I mean, electricity prices are. It's a really complex. These are really complex systems, and I think, but that makes it also not really easy to just introduce miners, because miners, they have to also to be profitable. That means you want to run them as often as possible, and if you can just run them at night or something, or just by day, it's doubtful if that will work. If you can be competitive with the other miners who just use coal, I don't know. Yeah, but that's what I said. Bitcoin is the buyer of last resort in the electrical grid. But it's not that easy. I think we haven't really seen that take off. But I think it's a point. It might work in the long run. Let's hope that people build more along that. And then there's some little more like philosophical reasons. Bitcoin might just incentivize people to save instead of spend. Of course, as we noticed, hodling causes CO2 emissions, but spending it causes too, right? If you spend money, something that you do spend it for, or if you invest it in some company, this will also emit CO2. It will also be bad for the climate, probably. I mean, there are other things, but on average, so maybe Bitcoin hodling isn't the worst thing you can do with your money. And then even more going ever more philosophical and vague in a way, Bitcoin might be part of a system that might not need growth to survive, because the current system, money is made by credit, right? And to pay back this credit and the interest on this, now we have negative interest, so that maybe that doesn't hold anymore. I'm not sure, but you would expect that the money supplied and the credit supply and thus the economy has to grow all the time. That's what we've been seeing like for the last 100 years. And Bitcoin might be a way out of this. I think the way is still a little vague. Maybe someone else has a more accurate description of this. But I see a lot of conviction in Bitcoin circles, but I haven't seen really spelled out how they imagine this to work. I think we're quite far away from that, but yeah, it's a nice vision, I think. What do you guys think about that?
I would have a question about that.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. I think I also with the long-term goal, I think we're even in the same boat with people that are active in the climate camp, because they also talk about the change in the money system that we would need to get off this forced growth path, so this credit-based system. There a lot of people are even aware in that kind of camp that we need to change there. The only thing is that they reject Bitcoin in a second is because of the, at the moment, the short-term CO2 footprint Bitcoin has. They want a solution that doesn't have this short-term problem. And this is why they reject Bitcoin the second they hear about it. But not everybody. There seem to be people in the Extinction Rebellion that at least open to this, to the possibilities if Bitcoin can reduce on the CO2. So this is something long-term. I think this is a very valuable thing there. On the short term, it's really the thing about the renewable energies, as you were saying. Wind and solar is not constantly there. Yeah, there are surpluses for some days. There are surpluses at daylight, but not at night. So it's hard for miners to run their equipment 24/7. What they need to make their return of investment before the hardware gets outdated. So this is definitely something that's a hard nut to crack. And it would need more investment into battery savings technology that you combine with your mining rig, and then you use kind of overcapacity of a planned overcapacity of renewables, and you would be kind of the buyer all time. And if just a case the society or the rest of the industry needs the energy, you sell it for a higher price to them. Those concepts could work, but the problem is they need investment up front. And this is a longer investment you do, so it's a higher risk, especially when you're not exactly sure where the price is going. So it's a really risky game. And I think this is exactly the reason why we see the growth of coal at the moment, or at least in the last kind of hype we were seeing, that miners switch quickly to coal because it's available, and even at the moment, the price is worth it. So they don't have to search for the cheapest energy; they have to search for the quickest available energy that doesn't put them in a long-term investment kind of scheme. So this is why coal is like this kind of first easy, lazy choice at the moment for miners that just want to pump up their mining operation quickly. So I think this is really all those midterm and long-term goals. I'm absolutely for them, but we have also to address this short-term problem we see.
All right, there was another question, I think, before.
Yeah, just a thought, because when it comes to fiat money, a long time ago I did some research, and there are two sides, like one claiming the regular money system cannot work because of the interest, which is not created by giving out credits, and the other one say, no, this thought is not complete, because people normally are not like isolated from the system, but they are part of the system, and part of the money will flow back into the system. So this avoids, as far as I've understood, the issue that eventually you will have to raise the amount of money to take care of the interests which have to be paid. Because if you only look about the money created by giving out credits, that part is missing in the system. But when it comes to Bitcoin, and part of this is, they say a real problem arises when it comes to fiat money again, when people really sum it up and not spending it anymore, because then they will take out money from the fiat system, and then in fact you have to raise the money amount all the time in order to take care of the inflation for the interest to be paid. And there I have a problem understanding how this is supposed to end with Bitcoin. If that amount is limited, let's say maybe comparable to gold, and people still decide to keep a severe amount of money, and obviously you cannot just inflate that Bitcoin system or cryptocurrency in general. So I wonder, how is that gonna work?
It's a good question. Does anybody want to answer that? Does anybody know that? I'm not an economist. I think it's really hard to think about these things. But does anybody?
Yeah, I'm also not a sound money expert. But as far as I can understand, is that every money that is created at the moment is tied to credit. There's a lot of money you really just get from savings. So credit, all the bank is regular. Even the banks in the US now have a zero reserve kind of thing. So it's almost every money you get out of when you make a credit, it's really credit money most of the time. So with Bitcoin, sure, there will be credits too. There will still be a money lending business, but credits will be much more expensive because this time the bank cannot just multiply and create money in their accounts to give out. So it will be much more expensive, and a lot of more investments will be done by savings so it was earned before over long term, and then the investment comes. So it will be. I don't think there's this pressure of this credit that deep anymore, and you don't need a money press to eat something there.
Yeah, let's just say
Okay.
I really don't know. It's a hard question. I think the thing is people actually really disagree about these things, and they have and it's hard to say. Economics to me is really hard to grasp because there are no hard facts there, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's also what I said at the beginning. I don't even have a specific opinion, neither energy consumption nor this topic now, because it's just overwhelming, and by far I don't understand enough. So same here. I just wonder because we already had like the gold standard, right? Like many people now say, oh, the fiat money system is flawed and inflation is embedded into it, but we already had the gold thing, but for some reasons they decided to get rid of that. So is there a legit reason, or are all the banks corrupted nowadays? I cannot really tell. I hear both sides, and I see more and more people go into the direction of saving themselves, or also the many YouTube videos, it's all about surviving and saving your money and like fighting against the state. I mean, isn't the state or the countries originally supposed to protect us? But no, nowadays you have to prepare for the time what happens if the state is failing. So yeah, I sometimes really think, is that all like conspiracy theory, or is there some real thing behind it?
I think we're getting far away from the topic again a little bit, but these are certainly very interesting discussions. But maybe let's do them afterwards.
Okay, yeah, no problem.
And continue with the topics on hand again. Okay, so we were at this. Yeah, so if we can't do this now, right? If this is not happening now, and we still want to do something, what can we do? If we don't just want to wait for regulation for like energy subsidies to go away, and if we don't just want to cry end of the world, like this author here who in 2017 wrote that Bitcoin mining is on track to consume all of the world's energy by 2020. I think we would have noticed it's less than 0.1% now, but okay, but still maybe a lot of Bitcoiners just say, oh, the market will solve this. I'm not quite convinced that at least in the short term that it will solve this. So what can we do now? Well, we thought about, but Bitcoin is money, right? And the whole point is that money is useful. If we don't believe that money is useful, then I guess we shouldn't be in Bitcoin. And it has been a very successful money if you measure the monetary value, and that's part of the problem. But maybe it can also help us solve for what we don't want to do. Maybe it can help solve climate change, and it's probably not. It won't solve climate change, but it can help. I think money can definitely help because lots of things you can do against climate change cost money, right? You can do offsetting, you can buy carbon credits, you can do political initiatives, you can do research into low energy, low CO2 energy or other things, interesting things. You can do campaigns for people to change their behavior or whatever. You know, it all costs money, all of this, and yeah, that's and our point of view is, okay, let's just solve it with money or help solve it. Let's just offset Bitcoin in a way. And there was actually a precursor to our initiative that was called offsetbitcoin.org. They don't really exist anymore, I think, but you can still give to Cool Earth with them. Yeah, so how much is that if we want to do that? It depends. how you calculate it, but it's a bit between 100 million and $2 billion for all of it, like all the history of Bitcoin now, and you can, and you would still need a bit every year. But is that a lot? I mean, it sounds terrible, right? 2 billion, it's wow, or even 100 million, it's a lot of money, right? But is it really? I mean, it's even 2 billion is less than 0.2 of Bitcoin's market cap today. It's for the entire history, right? That's nothing, and maybe it could translate to about 0.2% to 0.2% a year, because we're not always in a bull market, so it might be 0.2% in a year, yeah. But is that really a lot? I mean, it's a small price for owning Bitcoin, right? And if you hold fiat money, you lose 2%. That's very. Let's not get into that discussion, yeah. Let's believe them. It's just 2% inflation. Okay, but then we can definitely spend 0.1, 0.2% a year to offset Bitcoin, and that's if the hodlers paid for it all. I mean, we haven't talked about what can exchanges pay, what can the miners themselves pay, and so I'm arguing that's not really a lot of money. We can do that, and how do we do that? Well, yeah, that's the plan, right? The first thing is we do research and we inform. That's what we're doing here. I thank you all for being here and helping us understand this and doing your part. And the second part is we want to channel Bitcoiners' money to worthwhile causes, right? And there are two approaches that we've identified that we think are worth pursuing. One is classical offsetting. Classical offsetting is it's just what every other company usually does. It's these are very established organizations. There are standards there and organizations who vet them, like the gold standard, or what's the other called? A vet, something with we. I forget it. But there are multiple organizations there that actually look at these things and evaluate them and say, do they really do what they promise to do? But all these things, of course, have their costs. It's like you put in $20 and they promise you to somewhere save 1 ton of CO2, right? So you can fly or hold some Bitcoin, and that's the more expensive option. That's the 2 billion if we were to go that way. But there's another option that's effective climate organizations. This comes from the effective altruism camp, and the idea here is, okay, let's not do the classical offsetting, or maybe let's look at what would be the cheapest way or the most effective way. So if we just have like a few dollars and we want to have the greatest positive effect on the climate, what can we do? And there are some researchers who look at these things and say, okay, yeah, there are some organizations who have a great track record. They had 1 million. And they have saved, 1 million tons CO2 by changing legislation, by maybe getting the state. Usually they leverage the state somehow, because what they do is, for example, they take $1 of you, and then they get the state to invest. They use that dollar to get the state to invest $28 into research into renewable energy. So they have a lot of levers there, and this is more effective, and it's far more effective. It's like $1 per ton compared to 20 on average. But of course, it's also more vague. It's the variance is probably greater there, and it's not. You can't just say, okay, this is the trees that have been planted. This is exactly where the CO2 has been saved. It's just, okay, let's do this thing that we believe will probably help, and but the cool thing here is everybody can decide themselves what they believe. If you think, okay, this sounds a little pie in the sky, I'm going for classical offsetting. Yeah, it's not much worth either. It's still just 0.2% of your holdings if you held Bitcoin from 2009. But if you say, oh, that's too expensive, let's just I believe in legislation and getting people to change in effective ways, then you can just go give to the Funders Pledge fund, for example, and do this, and it's cheaper. And the thing is, if we spread our bets across many organizations who do many different things, I think it's like an investing. That's really hedging. You can not every organization will be as successful as they promised, but some will be more successful, and it'll all level out, I guess. And then it's important to us that we actually measure our impact. We actually count how much has been donated, and we estimate how much has been this has been the effect of this. And so far, we've like in about three months that our website is up, we've collected 8,000 euro. It's a little bit more, I guess, and reduced estimated 5,200 tons of CO2. That's a small beginning for sure, yeah. But I'm still proud of this. I think I'm very happy that lots of people have actually given money for that. All right. So how can you help? First, please offset your own Bitcoin footprint. However you calculate it. If you want to calculate, we have this website netpositive.money/calculator. Just go to netpositive.money. There's a calculator. You can say you can enter how many Bitcoin you have held for what time period. And no, we don't track your data. It's all JavaScript. It's all open source. You can look at the data. It stays on your own computer. It doesn't go over a network. You can also take the website offline. It still works. Or estimate it some other way. I don't care. Just give like a little bit of your Bitcoin and invest into something that you think is useful. We have some organizations on the website that automatically track for us. If you give to them, you can choose your own, but then you'd have to report manually to us what you have done. You can do that anonymously, or if you have a big, you can. If you do give a lot, you want to spread the word, you can tell us, and we're happy to help you get PR. If you're a company, if you're an exchange, whatever, you want to show people that you do good, we'd be happy to help. And actually, this seems to happen now. BitMEX has today committed to carbon neutrality. And they want to do offsets. I think they have the wrong metric, but maybe for them that makes sense because they actually count transactions. But yeah, I think there's actually something happening here that just happened today, and it kind of made me happy. Yeah, so if you offset your own footprint, secondly, please spread the word, tell others about this. If you have contacts in the industry, in people, in players in the Bitcoin network, exchanges, miners, whatever, tell them, hey, this is a great opportunity to get it to further our image, like even like for miners, right? We talked about this. The markets, some of the downturns here have been the effects of people having enough. They just say, oh yeah, no, Bitcoin is really a dirty business, right? And this is a narrative that has to change, and it will look very different if some miners say, okay, here's $1 million. We give this to an effective organization, and suddenly we can say, oh yeah, Bitcoin isn't so bad anymore. So spread the word. And third, we really would love you helping us. What are your skills? What can you do? Right? If you can help us translate the website, you can do design. We have had somebody help us do UX design on the website, and he did some great prototypes. They still have to be made reality. I haven't gotten to that. If you are good at that, if you wanna help us, we can always use help. It's all open source. You can fork if you don't like what we do, or just like a part of it, whatever. But we're happy to give off some responsibility. If you can help us research, right? You can do, they're really interesting things. Because, as I said, the amount of CO2 that we estimate, or that scientists have estimated that Bitcoin emits, I think these are really bad estimates, and research into that makes that better, that gets better estimates would help us, and then we don't have 2 billion anymore. Maybe it's just 1 billion, maybe it's less, right? Because actually the truth is probably somewhere in between. If you're a good communicator, right, talk to people, motivate them to help us to do this. Code, help us lead this. I think there's many ways for you to help this and to make Bitcoin a net positive money. That's where the name here comes from. Yeah, and I thank you for listening and for participating. And I'm happy to keep on the discussion with you. And thank you. Any other questions, remarks, discussion points?
Maybe like quickly to add, because we were saying like we can set off the whole history of Bitcoin. That I think this was just something to put into perspective. I think it's a good start that everybody starts with themselves and say, even if the numbers are not exactly down, even if it's just an estimation, but it's maybe the best estimation we have at the moment. So I just roll with it. If I offset a little bit too much, in the end, I think it doesn't hurt, because you always have to keep in mind other people might maybe just ignore the problem. So you also have to offset a little bit for them. So maybe if you overpay now a little bit, you pay a little bit for somebody else who's not thinking about this. So the ignorance of others can be priced in. So I think that's quite fine. And sometimes I hear the response when I tell people about it that are critical about Bitcoin and say, oh yeah, I offsetted my Bitcoin. I done my part. They say, yeah, but this is just buying you free, so it doesn't solve the problem. You're just kind of helping the problem. And the point is, they have to keep in mind, I have to pay now every year for my Bitcoin holdings. So I still have an incentive to get rid of those coal miners. So it's not that I'm just happy with the situation suddenly. It's just that I done my very short-term action. I did. And that's good, because we need immediate action to reduce the CO2 as much as possible. But I still have the interest to get the coal miners out, because I'm paying for their doings. And I would save money if they won't do it. So I still have a financial incentive to solve the problem even in other ways. So it's just a part of the solution. But I think it's an important step to do, and it's a good beginning we can do right now. And I think even if you find good solutions, there will always be some fossil mining, so there will always be something to offset. So I think the solution will always be part of what we have in the future. But it would be great, of course, if we can reduce it as little as much for the future.
All right, there's quite some comments in the chat here. I think there was something. I just skimmed your CO2 offset recommendation. Do you have an opinion about Cool Earth? Yeah, I do. Actually, I've looked into this, because a lot of people, the effective altruism communities used to recommend Cool Earth as something that's very effective, but they don't basically anymore, because there are newer evaluations of Cool Earth that say, okay, we don't really know. Maybe what they there's basically two possibilities. Either what they say they do, what they say will happen, like $1 will offset one ton, totally happens and it works perfectly, or nothing happens basically. So all the money is gone. There's nothing really. It's just all or nothing bet, and you can't really say it's pretty. I don't know. I wouldn't recommend it today anymore. There are probably safer bets than Cool Earth. But I don't know, if you believe in it, why not? What Cool Earth does is they support rainforest communities, so these communities don't have to log their rainforests. But there are some arguments why this might not work the way they imagine. Yeah, we have some expert, I think, in the comments here. Karl-Heinz seems to know a lot about these things.
Yeah, so I've been in carbon markets for more than 10 years now, and more crypto adjacent, but been invited by a friend to come over here, so I'm just feeding in the little expert points of view whenever possible. So yeah, avoiding deforestation is super difficult to measure, because you never know what would have happened without your intervention. In the community, we usually say it only works on a national level to actually get to know how many tons you have. So if that's your goal and you actually have to know how many tons you reduced, it's probably a bad area to invest. It's still a very effective area overall. It's just hard to tell which dollar cost which ton to be reduced.
All right.
So in general, you get the easiest way to know exactly how many tons to reduce is like a end of pipe type of project. So you basically capture methane and burn it, then you know exactly your greenhouse gas impact. And the more transformational stuff, like transforming your food system and your economic export system to protect the rainforest, that's going to be replaced by soy fields. The track from the dollar spent to the tree still surviving is much harder. And it's also not finished the moment you burn the methane, but you have to keep that effort going on for years and years and years and decades and decades and decades. So it's really hard to compare these two.
Wow. I think it's really, really great that you made it here and talked to us about this, because yeah, that's something that I just learned about like in the last year, and I'm sure there are many people like you who are really experts on this, and we can actually use some expertise about what is actually worth doing.
I mean, a very, very simple, the most simple, straightforward answer I can give you is if you want a ton per ton at all, and you have to think about if that's really what you want. But if you want ton per ton, I think the gold standard is a good address. You just go with them, you won't make a mistake. And if you grow beyond, let's say, $1 million a year, it's worth thinking beyond it and doing something more innovative and more large scale. But so as long as it's relatively small amounts, just buying gold standard is probably the best you can do.
All right, thanks. Any other discussion topics?
What I just like also to highlight is, because from the Bitcoin side, a lot of people like to have more this from a free market perspective. So don't involve the state to do all the regulations for us. And I just want to highlight that this is exactly what self-responsibility is about. Like, it's not waiting for the state to present you a solution to Bitcoin's CO2 footprint. It's to do it yourself, to analyze the situation as best as you can, take the best conservative kind of idea to fix it, or to address it at least. And so everybody who's always saying, "Oh, we are self-sovereign and all this stuff," so this is part of it. Sure, you can wait for the state to act, but then you know how it looks like. So they will use this topic to cripple Bitcoin as much as possible. So this is our chance to be self-responsible, and I think this is something we need to go forward with.
Yeah, I think there are more possibilities than doing this, I guess. I think there's really a future in green mining, and people can actually invest in mining if they know where the energy comes from. That's one thing you can do, right? It's probably not, you can do it, can't really do that with $10, but if you have a few thousand, then probably you can do something useful there. Or there are probably more ways of doing this. Like, you could imagine a mining pool that knows the miners that mine for them, and they know they have verified that these are clean miners, and then you could have companies who say, okay, that's nice, we want our transactions to be mined cleanly, and they pay extra for that, and they only give those transactions to the mining pool. So these mining pools would have a competitive advantage. This has some drawbacks, because we don't actually want all miners to be known, probably, and it's probably not thought through to the end. But I think there are quite some ideas that we can come up with that make the industry cleaner. It's just paying organizations that already do good things for the climate is probably easiest, because these people already are the experts, right? And we just have to give them money.
There's also one point. Yeah, there was somebody else.
Yeah, just briefly from the climate world again. So actually, there's never enough money for any individual action, but in the grand total, we are actually in a situation where we have more money than we can spend. So speaking for governments, so government red tape is making it really hard for the big climate finance institutions to actually get rid of their funding. And you've seen just now with the Bezos Earth Fund, they're just basically giving their money to the big NGOs that always get the funding anyway from the existing government institutions. So I think the interesting challenge would really be to have a scalable approach that's still peer-to-peer. It doesn't involve any, you know, you could just give the money to the Green Climate Fund and, you know, they are doing good for the climate, but they are very inefficient at it. And well, no, they're efficient, but very ineffective at it. So they're too slow and not getting the volumes done we need and not getting the growth as fast as it needs to grow. So the real challenge is not so much having the money at the moment, but being able to spend it properly. So really showing scalable spending is probably way more important than adding a few more dollars to the billions that we already have.
All right. There's been a question here. Who's actually allowed to talk on these events here? As far as I know, everybody is. So maybe just try it. Doesn't it work for you? Maybe you have to unmute yourself. No? Okay. All right.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, maybe like to comment, because even if you're, maybe even the people that are not that convinced about all this climate situation, that say, yeah, not sure, etc. But even if you have to think about it maybe in another way, if you want Bitcoin to go up, like if you want to see your investment go up, you want mainstream adoption. And I think we saw with Elon Musk, to say the crazy name, we saw with the last hype, we saw what mainstream adoption could do to the price. He was kind of promising or showing with Tesla, bringing Tesla to the table. He was showing, oh, if a big institution comes in and accepts Bitcoin and holds Bitcoin, could be the beginning, and you will see how the market were reacting. And this is mainstream adoption, and this is why we're seeing the bigger price, your investment was going up. But then he was, whatever nonsense he said in between, but in the end, he kind of did the showstopper and said, okay, no, we will now stop because we see no coal coming bigger. This is not the solution we see, and we have a problem with our customers at Tesla, kind of telling them that we are doing this. We are getting bad PR. We are not serving our customers with this action. So they had to stop it. So, and now this main adoption is stopped again, and you see the price falls. Just to give you what this means, beside all the Elon bullshit we were seeing, is that a Bitcoin that is clean has a higher value than a Bitcoin that works with coal mixed in with the percentage of coal we see right now. So, so there could be, even for miners, and I hope this comes true, there could even for miners now be a self-regulating effect, because they also leave money on the table now. They have a lower Bitcoin price. They saw what's possible, but now it's back it down again. So they will now see, oh, if we need maybe to kick out those other coal miners so that we can gain our profits. All renewable miners already they're losing profits in the end because there are some coal miners around. And even maybe some coal miners are thinking now about, maybe it makes sense to change my energy source, because then I would make more profits in the end. And maybe we will even see that some of those people that decide this way will take care now to shake those coal miners out with some various business strategies that are possible in the free market. So just there's some interesting sorts maybe to get from this, even if you're not that feeling that urgent with the climate topic. But just to accept, if you want to see a mainstream adoption in Bitcoin, you have to accept that the mainstream will only accept it if it has just a reasonable amount of fossil energy in there, that it's not, that it's marginalized. There will always be something, but it's kind of not that relevant anymore. Then market adoption will come, then your investments will grow. Otherwise, you will sit down where we are, what's also nice. I personally not need those mainstream adoption. I'm happy with Bitcoin as it is right now. But for everybody who wants to see number go up, you have to think about this. And those coal miners costing you money.
Good point. I think one I think we already mentioned this. One problem is that we don't actually know the most miners. We don't actually know what energy mix most miners use, and that's something that is being worked on too. That people are trying to get people to register or but it's a hard problem actually, because even if there were no coal miners, how would we know? It is pretty hard. But I think it's worth thinking about this. These are interesting problems. Okay, so if there are no more people who want to discuss, I'll end this here. Maybe we can still keep on discussing, but I'll join you guys down there.
Okay.